Have you ever described yourself as an anxious person? Or maybe you tell people, with a slight, self-deprecating laugh, that you're just a natural-born overthinker, a chronic perfectionist, or someone who simply doesn't handle stress well. We treat these descriptions like structural concrete, fixed, unyielding parts of who we are. We wear these labels like skin, assuming that our quickness to panic, our tendency to shut down during a difficult conversation, or our constant baseline restlessness is just woven into our DNA. We look at our daily struggles and say, well, that's just my personality. We carry these phrases around like identification cards, presenting them to the world so no one is surprised when we fall apart. You might tell a new partner, just so you know, I have a really hard time trusting people. Or you tell a colleague, I'm a control freak, it's just how I am. By naming it a personality trait, we give ourselves a strange sense of comfort. It feels safer to believe we were just manufactured this way, because if it's just your personality, then it isn't your fault. If it's just who you are, then you don't have to carry the heavy, confusing burden of wondering how you got so broken. You just accept the quiet ache of it. You accept the sleepless nights, the sudden waves of dread in grocery store aisles, and the constant, nagging feeling that you are somehow playing the game of life with fewer instructions than everyone else around you. But what if it isn't your personality? What if the things you dislike most about your daily behavior aren't character flaws at all? It's a heavy realization to sit with, but much of what we call personality is actually physiology. The way you react when someone takes too long to text back, the tightness in your chest when a meeting gets scheduled without an explanation, the sudden, overwhelming urge to run away when someone gets too close. That isn't a fundamental flaw in who you are. It's an echo. It's your biological defense system doing exactly what it was taught to do a long time ago. When you look closely at the labels you wear, you start to see the stitches. That anxious personality is often a nervous system that was forced to stay awake and alert to keep you safe when you were too small to protect yourself. That perfectionism isn't a beautiful dedication to quality. It is a deeply ingrained terror of making a mistake. Because once upon a time, a mistake meant a loss of love, a sudden outburst, or a cold abandonment. The person who calls themselves independent and detached isn't naturally cold. They are simply living in a body that learned it was deeply unsafe to depend on anyone else to meet their emotional needs. It is a profound and emotional shift to look at yourself in the mirror and realize that you have spent your entire adult life blaming your soul for wounds that were inflicted on your biology. Your true self isn't the panic, the avoidance, or the constant need to please. Those are just the heavy winter coats your body put on to survive a very long, very cold season. You have become so used to the weight of the coat that you think the coat is you. But underneath that armor, there is a quiet, authentic self that has been waiting, completely untouched by the chaos, just hoping you will finally notice the difference between who you are and how you had to survive. To understand why you feel this way today, we have to look back at how your internal thermostat was set. Think of your early home life not just as a collection of memories, but as an architectural blueprint for your physical body. When you were growing up, your body was constantly monitoring the environment to figure out one basic thing. Is it safe here? If your early environment was unpredictable, if emotions in the household exploded without warning, or if there was a cold, heavy silence that you had to navigate like walking on eggshells, your body adapted. Children are like sponges, but not just for words or ideas. Our physical bodies absorb the very air of the rooms we grow up in. If you grew up in a house where the air was always thick with unexpressed anger, your small body learned to hold its breath. You learned to read the precise density of the silence when you walked through the front door. You became an expert at decoding the sharp sound of footsteps in the hallway, the specific way a kitchen cabinet door was slammed, or the subtle shifting of a parent's eyes. Your body had to do this. It wasn't a choice. It was an instinctive, biological necessity, because your survival depended entirely on the adults around you. When a child's environment requires constant scanning, the physical body never gets the chance to learn what true rest feels like. Usually, a nervous system is supposed to operate like a wave, rising into alertness when there is a challenge, and then dropping back down into a deep, peaceful pool of safety when the challenge is gone. But if the baseline of your childhood home was defined by chaos, neglect, or high expectations that kept moving, that wave never crashed. It stayed suspended at the peak. Your body got stuck in the up position, keeping your heart rate a little faster, your muscles a little tighter, and your breathing a little more shallow than it ever needed to be. Your physical baseline was forged in that environment. If you had to be hyper-vigilant to keep the peace, your body learned that safety required constant alertness. It stayed on high alert so often that high alert became your normal. It became your quiet baseline. This is the tragic irony of a dysregulated system. Your body becomes comfortable with chaos because chaos is what it knows how to navigate. True quiet, true peace, and true stillness can actually begin to feel terrifying to an overworked nervous system. When things are calm, your body doesn't think, "Oh, we can rest now." Instead, it whispers, "It's too quiet. Something bad must be about to happen." Now, years later, you might live in a completely safe apartment, work a stable job, and be surrounded by people who care about you. But your internal thermostat is still set to that old, chaotic climate. You carry the architecture of that old house inside your ribs wherever you go. You could be sitting on a beautiful beach, watching a sunset with someone who loves you completely, and suddenly feel a wave of panic or a deep urge to pick a fight or pull away. You look at yourself and feel so much shame, wondering why you can't just enjoy a happy moment like everyone else. But you aren't naturally dramatic or inherently fragile. Your physical framework is simply operating on a system designed for a different, older reality. Your body is just trying to survive a past that your mind has already left behind. The walls of your current life are safe, stable, and warm, but the physical foundation you are standing on was poured during a storm. Healing isn't about tearing down who you are. It's about gently showing your body, day by day, that the old house has cleared out, the storm has passed, and it is finally safe to step outside and breathe. It's deeply exhausting to mistake survival for character. Let's look at the person who can never sit still, who fills every empty hour with productivity, and who feels a profound wave of guilt the moment they try to rest. We call that an overachiever. We praise their work ethic. We give them awards, look at their endless drive, and say, "Wow, I wish I had their discipline." But beneath that praise, that person's system is often terrified of what will happen if they stop. To their body, stillness feels like vulnerability. If they pause, the underlying anxiety will catch up to them. Their productivity isn't a personality trait, it's a shield. When you are forced to run on adrenaline just to feel secure, achievement becomes a drug. It is a desperate attempt to outrun a ghost. If you were only noticed as a child when you brought home perfect grades, when you cleaned the house without being asked, or when you were the good kid who never caused a single problem, your body learned a dangerous equation. My worth equals my output. You learned that to be loved, you had to perform. So now, as an adult, a blank Sunday afternoon doesn't feel like a luxury. It feels like an existential threat. Sitting on the couch makes your chest tighten because your nervous system is screaming that you are being lazy, and in your body's memory, being lazy meant being invisible, rejected, or unsafe. Consider the opposite, the person who fades into the background, who always agrees with everyone else, and who completely loses their own voice just to avoid a minor disagreement. We call them a people pleaser, or say they are naturally passive. We might even get frustrated with them and say, "Why don't you just stand up for yourself?" But in reality, that passivity was a survival strategy. In their past, expressing an independent opinion or showing anger was dangerous. Agreeing was how they stayed secure. If you grew up around a parent whose temper could ignite over a wrong look, or an environment where your needs were met with mocking or cold shoulders, disappearing became your art form. You became a shapeshifter. You learned to read the room and instantly become exactly who everyone else needed you to be, just so the temperature wouldn't change. When survival strategies work, we repeat them until they become automatic, eventually confusing our survival defenses with our actual identity. We look at our coping mechanisms and call them our souls. The person who uses humor to deflect any hint of emotional intimacy says, "I'm just a sarcastic guy." The person who aggressively controls every detail of a vacation says, "I'm just an organized person." The person who shuts down completely and locks themselves in a room the moment an argument starts says, "I'm just someone who needs space." But these aren't preferences. They are ancient, biological armor. They are the reflexes of a body that is still trying to protect itself from old hurts. It is a heartbreaking realization to notice how much of what we like and dislike about ourselves is just the shape of our scar tissue. You are not inherently cold, you are not naturally frantic, and you are not fundamentally broken. You are a human being who lived through a specific set of circumstances and built the exact bridge you needed to get to the other side. When you begin to see that your most frustrating behaviors are actually just tired protectors, the shame begins to dissolve. You can finally stop fighting yourself for surviving and start wondering who you might be if you didn't have to fight at all. Let's talk about how this shows up on an ordinary Tuesday. You're sitting at your desk, and your supervisor sends a brief message. Come see me when you have a minute. Objectively, it's a standard request, but inside your body, an alarm sounds. Your heart rate increases, your breathing turns shallow, and your mind immediately races to the worst possible conclusions. I'm getting fired. I did something wrong. You try to talk yourself down using logic, but your physical body is already miles ahead, reacting as if you are facing an immediate physical threat. You might try to take a sip of water, but your throat feels tight and dry. You look around the office, and everything appears completely normal. The sun is shining through the window. Your coworkers are chatting quietly by the coffee machine, and the world is moving along at its usual rhythmic pace. Yet, inside your skin, you are in a war zone. Your palms are sweating. Your stomach is twisting into a hard, painful knot, and a cold wave of dread is washing over you. You feel completely exposed, as if a spotlight has been turned on your deepest vulnerabilities. This is the agonizing reality of the invisible alarm. It doesn't care about the reality of the room you are standing in. It only cares about the reality it has memorized. This is what an uncalibrated biological response feels like in modern life. The system cannot differentiate between a vague text message and an actual crisis. It treats emotional uncertainty with the same urgency as physical danger. It doesn't just happen at work, either. It happens when your partner walks into the kitchen and sighs heavily without saying why. Instantly, your body interprets that sigh as an impending storm. Your mind starts scanning through everything you've done over the past 48 hours, trying to find the mistake you must have made. It happens when a friend cancels dinner plans at the last minute because they are tired. Instead of thinking, oh, they need some rest, your body feels a sudden, sharp sting of rejection. The alarm sounds, whispering that they are pulling away from you, that they are bored of you, that you are ultimately too much to handle. When you experience this, you might feel deeply ashamed. You might berate yourself for being too sensitive or too dramatic. You walk out of the meeting with your supervisor, which turned out to be completely fine, just a quick question about a routine project. And instead of feeling relieved, you feel incredibly angry with yourself. You think, why do I always do this? Why am I so broken? What is wrong with me that I can't just handle a simple message without losing my mind? You look at the people around you, who seem to glide through these minor social friction points with ease, and you feel like a functional alien. hiding a chaotic, frantic interior behind a carefully practiced smile. But your body isn't trying to make your life difficult. It's misinterpreting the present because it is still looking at the world through the lens of your past experiences. It is relying on old data. If you grew up in a house where a heavy sigh meant an explosion was coming, or where being called into a room meant you were about to be shamed or punished, your body would be foolish not to sound the alarm. Your nervous system is simply playing a tape that used to keep you safe. It is trying to prepare you for the worst so that you won't be caught off guard like you were when you were a child. The alarm is a message of love from a body that survived a difficult past. But it is a message delivered in a language that no longer fits the beautiful, quiet life you are trying so hard to build today. For a long time, we've been told that the solution to our problems is to change our thoughts. We try positive affirmations. We write lists of things we are grateful for, and we analyze our childhoods over and over again, hoping that if we just understand why we are this way, we will finally stop feeling so anxious. We become scholars of our own pain. We buy the books, we listen to the podcasts, and we learn the vocabulary of healing. We can map out our childhood wounds with clinical precision, talking about our pasts with a calm, detached eloquence. But have you ever noticed that you can understand your patterns perfectly and still feel that familiar, suffocating tightness in your throat when stress hits? You can know intellectually that you are safe, while your body acts like everything is falling apart. It is an incredibly lonely frustration to be trapped in a mind that knows the truth, while living in a body that refuses to believe it. You sit there, telling yourself, there is nothing to be afraid of. My partner loves me. My job is secure. I am an adult now. But your heart is still hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. Your shoulders are still pinned up to your ears like heavy stone weights. Your stomach is still taut and knotted. In those moments, your intellect feels completely useless. You feel like a hypocrite because your brain is shouting one thing, but your physical reality is screaming another. You realize that you cannot think your way out of a feeling, and you cannot talk a baseline change into a physical structure that has been frozen in time. This happens because our physical stress responses operate beneath our logical minds. When your system registers a threat, it shuts down the thinking parts of your brain to prioritize immediate survival. The evolutionary design of your body doesn't care about your logic when it thinks you are in danger. It cares about speed. If a heavy weight is falling toward you, you don't analyze its trajectory. You jump out of the way. Your nervous system treats your emotional ghosts with that exact same primal urgency. You cannot talk a body out of a state of panic using logic alone, because the panic didn't start in your thoughts. It started in your physical physiology. It started in the deep, instinctual basements of your brain, where language doesn't live. To truly heal, we have to stop treating our well-being as a purely mental puzzle to be solved, and start addressing the physical state where that anxiety lives and breathes. We have to stop abandoning the body to go live entirely in our heads. Shifting the focus means learning to stop asking, "Why am I feeling this way?" and starting to ask, "Where am I feeling this way?" It means noticing that your anger is actually a hot flash in your chest, that your grief is a heavy pressure behind your eyes, and that your fear is a sudden emptiness in your stomach. When you stop fighting the thoughts and start gently keeping company with the physical sensations, the internal landscape begins to change. You stop trying to argue your body into safety, and you start showing it safety through the rhythm of your breath, the softness of your posture, and the patience of your presence. This dynamic brings us to a profound insight by Carl Jung, who deeply understood the invisible patterns that shape our lives. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When we apply this to our physical bodies, it changes everything. The unconscious isn't just an abstract concept. It is physically held in your muscles, your posture, and your resting heart rate. It is the heavy, invisible architecture that was built brick by brick while you were just trying to grow up. When your body automatically protects itself by shutting down or lashing out, it is operating on unconscious patterns built during your upbringing. These patterns become so deeply woven into your daily existence that you don't even notice them anymore. They become the ambient noise of your life. You think it is just the way the world works, or worse, you think it is just who you are destined to be. If you leave these physical responses unexamined, you will keep running into the same relationship problems, the same career burnouts, and the same emotional walls. You will find yourself repeatedly choosing partners who make you feel invisible. And you will say, "I just have bad luck in love." You will push yourself to the brink of physical collapse at every job you take, and you will say, "The corporate world is just toxic." You will feel a sudden, icy wall go up inside you the moment someone tries to get close to your heart. And you will say, "I'm just a solitary person." You will look at your life and think, "I'm just unlucky. This is just my fate." But it isn't fate. It is your physical system repeating the only patterns it knows, waiting for you to notice them. Welcoming this architecture means stopping the cycle of frustration and starting the process of looking closer. It means realizing that your body has kept a flawless record of everything you had to survive. The subconscious isn't hiding in some distant, unreachable corner of your mind. It is living in the clenching of your jaw when you try to speak up for yourself. It is living in the shallow, rapid breathing that hits you when someone leaves the room. It is living in the way your eyes constantly scan for the nearest exit, even when you are sitting in a room full of people who love you. These are not random hitches in your machinery. They are the beautiful, heartbreaking, and incredibly intelligent blueprints of your survival. To make the unconscious conscious, you have to stop running from these physical sensations. You have to stop treating your body like an uncooperative stranger and start treating it like a child that is still frightened of the dark. When you feel that sudden wave of unexplainable dread, instead of trying to push it down or numb it, you learn to sit with it. You say to your body, I see you. I feel how hard you are working to protect me right now. I notice how tight my chest has become. By simply witnessing your physical reactions without judgment, you pull them out of the shadows of the unconscious. You begin to see that your fate is actually just a collection of old, tired habits that your body adopted to keep you safe. And once you see them for what they truly are, not permanent flaws, but temporary shields, you finally gain the power to choose a different way to live. Living with your defense mechanisms constantly activated carries a profound, everyday cost. It is exhausting to carry invisible armor everywhere you go. When your internal system is perpetually scanning for danger, it drains your vital energy. You wake up tired, even after 8 hours of sleep. You find yourself struggling to concentrate on simple tasks because a portion of your mind is always occupied with monitoring the room. Your body is working overtime, fighting a battle that ended years ago. When you spend your life wearing heavy armor, you don't just keep out the bad things. You accidentally lock out the good things too. Armor doesn't have a filter. It doesn't know how to let in love, joy, and deep connection while keeping out pain and rejection. It just blocks everything. So, you live your life behind a thick, protective wall, looking out at a world that seems vibrant and warm, yet feeling strangely detached from it all. You can be surrounded by laughter, music, and people who are genuinely trying to love you. But inside your chest, everything feels muffled. You feel numb, like you're watching your own life through a foggy window. You want to feel the warmth. You want to be fully present, but the armor won't let you soften enough to let it in. Over time, this constant physical tension alters how you experience the world. It narrows your life. You start avoiding certain places, turning down invitations, or pulling away from deep relationships because your system simply doesn't have the capacity to handle anything new. A simple dinner with friends starts to feel like an insurmountable chore. An opportunity to try a new hobby or step into a new role at work feels less like an exciting adventure and more like an unsafe risk. Your world gets smaller and smaller, shrinking down to a tiny perimeter of absolute predictability, because predictability is the only thing that keeps your nervous system from spinning out. You assume you're just an introvert who dislikes people, but the truth is much more tender. Your system is simply exhausted from carrying a heavy shield through a quiet world. The armor that once kept you safe is now the very thing keeping you isolated. It is heartbreaking to realize that the defenses you built to protect your life are now preventing you from actually living it. You carry a deep, quiet grief for the version of you that could have been. The one who laughed loudly without worrying about who was looking. The one who loved without waiting for the other shoe to drop. The one who could just be. Every day that you walk out into the world with your shoulders pinned back and your heart guarded, you pay a tax in the currency of your own vitality, spending your precious, limited life force on a war that is already over. When people realize their lives are being driven by an overactive defense system, their first impulse is often frustration. They want to break the armor, fight the anxiety, and force themselves to be calm. They look at their tendency to panic, their sudden freezes, or their exhausting people-pleasing, and think, I need to fix this. I need to get rid of this part of me. We treat our coping mechanisms like unruly enemies that need to be beaten into submission. We get angry at our own fear, and we scold our bodies for trembling. But fighting your physical system only creates more internal conflict. It is like screaming at a fire alarm for making noise while the building is smoking. The alarm isn't the problem. It's just responding to what it perceives as danger. Think about it. Your body created these responses out of a deep desire to protect you. Every time you panicked, every time you shut down, every time you ran away, your body was trying to ensure your survival in the best way it knew how. When you were a child navigating an unpredictable or cold environment, you didn't have the power to change your surroundings. You couldn't pack your bags and leave. So, your nervous system stepped in as your internal guardian. It closed the doors when the emotional climate became too toxic. It flooded you with adrenaline so you could match the frantic energy around you. It made you small and quiet so you wouldn't become a target. Every single symptom that frustrates you today was once a brilliant, life-saving adaptation. Your defense system isn't a defect. It is a monument to how deeply your biology loves you and wants you to stay alive. Instead of treating your anxiety as an enemy to be defeated, try meeting it with gentleness and curiosity. Imagine how exhausting it has been for your body to stand at the gates of your life, holding a heavy sword, refusing to sleep for 20, 30, or 40 years because it thinks a threat is always just around the corner. When you look at your defenses through the lens of appreciation rather than anger, your relationship with yourself fundamentally changes. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" And you start saying, "I see how hard you've been trying to keep me safe." When you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, instead of getting angry, take a breath and acknowledge it. Recognize that this physical reaction is an old protector that doesn't realize the danger has passed. You can actually speak to that anxiety the way you would speak to a frightened child. You can place a hand over your heart, feel the rapid thumping beneath your palms, and quietly whisper to your system, "Thank you for trying to protect me from being rejected. Thank you for watching out for me. But we are safe now. The people in this room love us." You can lower your shield for a little while. When you change your internal response from anger to kindness, something beautiful happens. The defense system begins to soften. It realizes it doesn't have to fight so hard anymore. Biology relaxes in the presence of compassion. When your nervous system senses that you are no longer fighting it, it finally feels safe enough to stand down. The rigid muscles start to loosen. The breath drops deeper into the belly, and the constant, frantic scanning for threats slows to a gentle halt. You don't heal by breaking yourself. You heal by loving the parts of you that had to break to keep you whole. As the old defense mechanisms begin to ease, you face an important question. If I am not my anxiety, my perfectionism, or my people-pleasing, then who am I? This period of transition can feel disorienting and strange. When you stop filling every moment with frantic productivity, you might feel a profound emptiness at first. It can feel like standing in an empty room after all the noise has suddenly stopped. For so long, your days were defined by the fire you had to put out, the expectation you had to meet, or the person you had to placate. When those demands fade, the quiet can feel less like peace and more like a void. When you start setting boundaries and saying no, you might feel an intense wave of guilt. Your body might scream that you are being selfish, that you are going to lose everyone, or that you are fundamentally unsafe. This discomfort is a natural part of the healing process. It is the feeling of old patterns fading away. It is the stretching of muscles that haven't been used in a lifetime. Carl Jung beautifully captured this journey toward authenticity when he stated, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to become who you truly are, you must first peel back the layers of who you had to be to survive your upbringing. You have to be willing to look at the roles you played and gently lay them down. You are not the hyper-vigilant protector, nor are you the quiet child who hid their needs. Those were just the scripts you were handed to navigate your early life. Reclaiming yourself means realizing that your true identity wasn't destroyed by what happened to you. It was just buried. It was preserved underneath the protective layers, like a seed waiting for the winter to end. Who you truly are is the person who exists when there is nothing to prove and no one to manage. It is the version of you that knows how to rest without an apology. It is the voice inside you that knows what it likes, what it dislikes, and what it needs, without checking the room first to see if it's okay to feel that way. Reclaiming your authentic self is an act of deep remembrance. It is noticing the tiny glimpses of your true nature that peek through when you feel completely safe. The sudden, uninhibited laugh, the quiet curiosity about a hobby you gave up years ago, or the gentle warmth that expands in your chest when you allow yourself to be truly seen. This journey back to yourself is not about creating a brand new, flawless version of who you are. It is about an emotional homecoming. It is about welcoming back all the parts of yourself that you had to exile just to keep the peace. It is looking at your sensitivity and realizing it isn't a weakness, but a beautiful capacity for empathy. It is looking at your anger and realizing it isn't a defect, but a fierce boundary holder that is finally learning to speak with clarity instead of panic. Beneath those defenses lies your authentic self, a version of you that is inherently calm, curious, and capable of deep connection, waiting to be rediscovered. You are finally stepping out of the theater of survival and into the quiet, sacred reality of your own life. Rewiring an ingrained physical response is not a transformation that happens overnight. It is a slow, quiet journey built on tiny, daily choices. It happens when you choose to stay present for just 3 deep breaths while your body wants to run away. For so many years, your internal thermostat has been set to an extreme temperature, accustomed to the scorching heat of panic or the freezing numbness of a total emotional shutdown. When you begin the work of healing, your system doesn't immediately know how to exist in a gentle, ambient climate. A normal, peaceful day can feel disorienting, and your body might instinctively try to turn the dial back to the stress it remembers. Setting a new thermostat means having the immense patience to teach your biology that peace is not a trap. This shifts in micro moments that no one else will ever see. It happens when you pause before replying to an upsetting message, giving your system a moment to realize it is safe. In that tiny space between the notification and your reaction, you are rewriting your history. You are telling your heart that it doesn't need to race, and you are telling your hands that they don't need to shake. It happens every time you choose self-compassion over your old, harsh self-criticism. When you make a mistake at work or accidentally disappoint a friend, the old thermostat will want to flood you with shame to protect you from being blamed. Setting the new thermostat means gently stepping in and saying to your body, "We made a mistake, but we are still allowed to be here. We are still worthy of love." As you commit to this practice, your physical baseline begins to shift in beautiful, subtle ways. You will find yourself catching your breath before you lose it. You will notice the exact moment your shoulders begin to creep up toward your ears, and you will have the tools to gently drop them back down. You will begin to tolerate stillness. A quiet afternoon will stop feeling like a countdown to disaster and start feeling like an invitation to rest. Your body will slowly learn the difference between an actual crisis and a passing cloud of discomfort, and it will stop exhausting its precious energy on battles that are no longer yours to fight. Gradually, with patience and time, your internal thermostat will begin to adjust. You will notice that the things that used to throw you into a day-long spiral now only cause a brief moment of tension. A vague text message, a heavy sigh from a partner, or a sudden change in plans will still register in your body. But the alarm won't stay stuck in the on position. It will beep once, notice that there is no fire, and quietly turn itself off. You will find yourself breathing a bit deeper, resting without feeling guilty, and speaking your mind without a wave of panic. This is the ultimate realization of your healing journey. You are not permanently broken, and you are not trapped by your past. Your nervous system is not a rigid, unyielding cage. It is a living, breathing part of you that is fully capable of learning how to feel safe again. You are simply learning the language of your physical body, stepping out of survival mode, and finally, giving yourself permission to live. You are building a new home inside your own skin, one where the windows are open, the air is clear, and the temperature is exactly where it belongs. To look back at the path you have walked is to realize that healing is never about becoming a different person. It is not about engineering a flawless, invulnerable version of yourself who never feels fear, never experiences doubt, and never trips over an old trigger. If you came to this work hoping to completely erase the history written into your skin, it is vital to gently let that expectation go. True healing is an act of reclamation, not alteration. It is an emotional homecoming to the self you always were before the world told you who you had to be to survive. It is the quiet, sacred process of stepping out of the theater of perpetual warfare and realizing that the ground beneath your feet is no longer shaking. Think about the sheer magnitude of what your physical body has accomplished. For decades, it carried you through environments that felt entirely unsafe, unpredictable, or emotionally cold. It adjusted your heart rate, altered your breathing, and tightened your muscles because it loved you enough to keep you alive at all costs. It built heavy walls of perfectionism, overachievement, and people-pleasing, not because you were broken, but because it needed a shield to protect your soft, authentic heart from being crushed. Your symptoms were never design flaws. They were your body's brilliant, instinctual architecture of survival. When you look back at your past through this lens, the heavy coat of shame you have worn for so long finally begins to slide off your shoulders. You stop blaming your personality for wounds that were inflicted on your physiology. This realization brings a profound sense of grief, and it is essential to allow yourself to feel it. You may feel a deep ache for the child who had to learn to walk on eggshells, the teenager who felt they had to be perfect just to be seen, and the adult who spent years berating themselves for an anxiety they couldn't control. Let yourself weep for the time spent behind that heavy armor. Let yourself mourn the relationships that were narrowed by fear, the opportunities turned down because the invisible alarm was screaming, and the simple, quiet afternoons that were stolen by the agonizing guilt of trying to rest. This grief isn't a sign that you are moving backward. It is proof that your heart is finally softening enough to care about its own pain. You are honoring the cost of your survival. But as the grief clears, a beautiful, vast space opens up within your life. For the first time, you are no longer using all your vital energy to fight a ghost from your upbringing. You start to notice the tiny daily miracles of a calibrated system. It is the deep, unobstructed breath you take when an unexpected change occurs, and your chest doesn't instantly tighten into a knot. It is the calm stillness of a Sunday morning where you sit with a cup of tea, and your mind doesn't race to find a task to justify your existence. It is the incredible freedom of setting a firm boundary, saying a quiet no, and watching the wave of guilt pass by without letting it pull you under. You are no longer just reacting to life. You are experiencing it. Carl Jung reminded us that the ultimate privilege is to become who we truly are. That authentic self has been waiting for you all along, preserved perfectly underneath the protective layers of your old armor. Who you are is the calm, curious, and deeply capable human being who can look at a modern stressor, feel a brief flash of the old alarm, and gently remind their own system that the storm has long since cleared away. You are the one who is finally setting a new thermostat, choosing self-compassion over criticism, and learning to trust the safety of the present moment. The journey of rewiring your biology is slow, quiet, and deeply iterative. There will be days when the supervisor sends a brief text, or a partner sighs heavily in the kitchen, and your heart will instantly hammer against your ribs like it used to. In those moments, do not think you have failed. Do not think you are back at square one. Instead, wrap your arms around yourself, place a hand over your heart, and remember that your old protector is just trying to do its job. Breathe through the tension. Stay present with the physical sensation, and gently show your body the room you are currently standing in. Show it the safe walls, the stable ground, and the people who love you for exactly who you are, not for what you can perform. You are not permanently broken, and you are no longer trapped by the climate of your upbringing. You have survived the storm, carried the shield, and made it across the bridge to the other side. Now, the war is officially over. You are permitted to lower your hands, unclench your jaw, and lay your heavy armor down in the grass. Your physical body is learning the sweet, forgotten language of peace, and your soul is finally, beautifully, giving itself permission to live. Welcome home.